I see. You've been impressed by the recurring factor in these cases of the wound from the throat to the sternum. The obsession of a vindictive-minded man who's been poisoned or disfigured forever by atomic radiation. One might even say, a vampire of the atom age who wants to recover.
Exactly.
Hello again, and welcome back to Bad Movie Review. Today I'd like to discuss Atom Age Vampire. I just watched this little cinematic classic from Italy, and brought to us from 1960, and coming in at just over an hour. Now, the premise of this one is that after being dumped by her boyfriend, who's kind of a jerk, this girl Jeanette, who apparently is a stripper or some sort of tawdry entertainer of some sort, gets into a car accident. She is horribly scarred on one side of her face, but a mysterious woman visits her, promising that her scientist friend can help her with treatments that will magically cure her ailment. Now, of course, Jeanette gives in and agrees to do it. Eventually, there's some boring nonsense in between. Naturally, the scientist guy falls in love with her. As to be expected in these sort of things when, you have hot strippers around. This makes his female assistant jealous, of course. The experiment seems to work at first, but the effects are obviously temporary. So the professor, in his love, in fact, must kill young women to obtain the vital ingredients that he needs to keep this new love beautiful. And it gets silly after that. The acting is horrible because it's dubbed. And dubbed actors, well, I think they were all recruited from the porn industry. Because, wow. I'm not talking the high-end porn stars. I mean the, D-list uggos that are probably more than attainable in real life. So the acting is just, it's rough. It is pretty awful. But that kind of adds to the charm of this movie. There's no vampires, so it's apparently like a bad translation, but there is a line in there in the movie, something along the lines of an Atom Age vampire. So it's more of a Jekyll and Hyde story, where this man is subjecting himself to a failed experiment to become this monster that can go out and murder young women and for keeping this chick alive, and then he goes and puts himself in some sort of device and rejuvenates himself back. It's just a silly movie. It's kind of funny, actually. I got a kick out of watching it because it was easy to make fun of. The acting was so over the top. It's not synced at all, so there's a lot of times where somebody will scream and then their mouth will open, is how it looked to me, and that kind of worked for it. It was a charming horror film, if you can believe that. No, it was a lot of fun to sit through, and I was giggling through the entire thing. It has some weird music too. They had this weird, almost beatnik kind of soundtrack where there's saxophone music, like a jazzy kind of, they were trying to go for a film noir soundtrack or something, and it just failed because this movie's pretty terrible. But the makeup was actually pretty good. I thought they did a good job with that. The pacing was kind of hit and miss for me, but because the makeup was good for the transformation and time sequences where he's transforming into this Mr. Hyde type monster, I thought that was actually shockingly impressive because it was actually fairly consistent. They did a pretty good job with that. So good job, props and makeup department. The sets were pretty good. The standout actor was the mute, believe it or not. And I'm not saying that ironically. He was probably the one person that conveyed everything that needed to be conveyed because he didn't need to speak a word and it didn't make me giggle. So check this one out. It was a hilarious time. It was worth mocking. It's not a good movie unto itself, and there's no vampires, so don't expect that. But the whole idea of healing people with radiation and exposure to nuclear material is, yeah, it doesn't really give you superpowers. This is the 60s, so that they all seem to think that, with generic scientists, by science, you can be cured with radiation. It's the hot new thing. So that kind of, retrospectively, is kind of funny and kind of horrifying, because she would have just died with all that radiation. Unregulated, apparently. Apparently in Italy in the 60s, you could just expose people to radiation at a whim, and no one seemed to care. Like, oh, you're a scientist. They don't say what kind of scientist he is, because they never do in these kind of movies. So, apparently just random scientists can get a hold of radioactive material and start exposing pretty young women to it. This movie really needed nudity, too, because that would have kept me paying closer attention, I think. But, nope, none of that. No vampires, no boobs. Just cheesy dialogue and some decent makeup effects. So that's it. I recommend checking it out. It's worth a laugh. It's one of those movies that the premise could have been pretty good if it had had a real budget and some studio support of some kind, but it was not a vampire movie. Although that would have been much cooler. Radioactive vampires. I'd watch that movie.
Come here, I'll give you anything you
But
want.
it's just a Jekyll and Hyde film, and it's fairly poorly done, but it's worth a laugh. So check it out, and we'll catch you next time on Bad Movie Review. Thanks for listening.
Me now.